Well, by the way, speaking of Toronto, when is the NHL going to announce the hub cities? What's the delay?
Well, there's more than that. Break it down for you. I'll put it in the easiest terms. There is so much turmoil going on between the NHLPA and the owners that there's a lot that has to get hammered out. And I think that's sort of been put on the back burner. We heard yesterday possibly that Vegas is out. They're now talking Toronto and Edmonton. There's still issues with the border crossing and everything, although they're starting to open, and they probably would open. Mr. Trudeau, our Prime Minister, would probably open it up in Canada for players to cross. But that's only one thing, guys. There's three things that are really holding this up. And it's, number one, the hub city, but I think that's at the bottom of the list. Number two is putting together a new CBA, a collective bargaining agreement that the players and owners need to agree on before we move forward. They can't just go ahead and say, let's start play without something firmly in their hand. There's a lot of things going on now. The players and the owners in hockey have a 50-50 split of revenues. Right now, the players are in arrears by about $400 million that they will owe the owners. So with the new ownership and CBA extension needed, how do the players repay the owners? How many years is this term going to be? How is the escrow going to work? How are the players going to get paid? You see, what happened is the players have been paid 90% of their salaries this year. At the end of every season, there is a 50-50 split of revenues between the players not making money because of the pandemic. All of a sudden now the players need to come up with more money. So that means escrow is going to increase. Last year, this season, for example, was like 10 or 11%. So every time now it's Ovechkin, he would lose like $1 million. Let's say he made $10 million even. He would lose $1 million to escrow. Next year, because of the situation we have here, you're talking 25 to 27% escrow of every player's salary, which means that's why players like Panarin, you probably read the news, him coming out and being very vocal saying, we've got to set this up right for us. The problem is they are so far in arrears because of the 50-50 split. And today's a big day, number one, because it's Canada Day, but number two, it's usually free agency. And number three, this is the day that all bonuses are being paid. So today the owners have to fork over between $300 and $400 million, guys.
Yeah, I don't remember bonuses. What is that word you speak of?
So
we used to get those.
So Craig, are you saying that this season, this abbreviated season, is not going to start until they come to an agreement?
I would say yes, and that to me is what's been holding up the hub cities and everything else. They've got to get everything hammered out. Guys, they don't even have, as far up to my knowledge, is they haven't had the guidelines put together on how the hub cities are going to be worked. I mean, I think they've got, in principle, guidelines put together and probably hundreds of pages of stuff, but they need still a majority vote for the players to agree to all this. How are they going to be paid Stanley Cup playoff bonuses, for example? How are they going to do? And these are just minor things compared to the big picture. What I do think is we will play, but this July 10th start may happen, but they're really focused on starting next season sometime in late December or January anyways, so they have time in here to finish up all the paperwork, which is going to take time, guys, because the players need a motivation to return. That escrow account that they own the owners, by the way, I think I was off a little bit. It was like $550 million that they owe back. So, guys, there's a lot of things in the lurk here that have to be completed before the NHL comes back to play.
Joined by Craig Laughlin at Laughlin18 on Twitter, Caps TV color analyst on NBC Sports Washington. Do you think we're going to see the same thing happen in the NHL that we're seeing in Major League Baseball? We saw it with the Washington Nationals recently with Ryan Zimmerman and Joe Ross opting out of coming back to play. Are we going to see that with a few guys from the Caps, from other guys around the NHL?
I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the players generally want to play, but it's if they can get the CBA done, if they can get this extension done, the return to play will happen, and that's often easier said than done. Let's just do the CBA. Well, it's going to take some hard work between the Players Association and the owners. Do I think it's going to get done? Yes. Do I think the season could start August 1st, which is sort of the date that everyone expects the NHL to start and play? I'm not sure that's going to be the date that it's going to start. I think it could be later in the month that it would start because of these holdouts. But I don't see players, the only players that are in jeopardy, for example, with a CBA that isn't completed, is free agents. What happens to Braden Holtby? Does he want to risk the opportunity to play rather than risk health and things like that, even getting injured during this time when he's up for a very lucrative long-term deal? Those are the players that, to me, have to think about their return. But across the board, I know all the hockey. I love the hockey players. I really do think when it's all said and done, they will all be back and participating for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned the the discussions between the players and the owners, because I thought I read about 4 or 5 days ago, maybe it was last week, that they were pretty close to an agreement. Are you saying that those reports are erroneous, then not very close?
I don't think they are close. I think that there's a lot of stuff. This escrow thing, why do you think Panarin and a lot of the players are starting to come out secretly and anonymously saying, hey, we need this thing done? They don't want to go into next season not knowing, for example, what their escrow is going to be. And if the escrow goes from 11% to 27% next year, for every guy that makes $1 million, he loses $270,000 just in escrow.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Hell
right?
yeah.
And
yeah.
They owe it back, but how do they now make that payment back to the owners? That, to me, is really the negotiating factor. I think they'll hopefully hammer it out, but it's going to have to be a 3-4 year deal at least for the owners to be happy. And now they're doling out all the money today for the incentives and stuff like that. So we're going to see where this heads.
Craig, has the league decided what they're going to do for next year, since they're going to be playing so deep into the summer and the early fall, which obviously they're not used to doing? Is the league year going to start at the same time next year, or is it going to be a smaller season? Have they discussed that?
It's going to be one of the things. Do the players have to compress the season, and all of a sudden now we start – there's a lot of chatter starting, hey, let's start with the Winter Classic at the end of December. Now, that's all under the understanding that COVID is under control and that we can move forward. So now you go December, January, you maybe start training camp in December, you play and start at January, somewhere in there between the 15th and the 30th of December, you start to play. To me, it's going to have to be compressed. They're going to have to deal with playing more games in a week. They may have to get rid of their mandatory in the current CBA one day of the week off, because we may not be able to fit that in. I think the NHL, to be perfectly honest with you guys, is that I'm not sure they ever have wanted to play in October anyways. I could see the season in the future being all shifted to November with football and all the active sports in the month of September and October. I think that October is a low month for the NHL financially, for getting people in the buildings and things like that. So to me, the real key is, can they go from December to probably August 1st or mid-July with the Stanley Cup, and then starting back up November 1st the next year? I think that could be an ongoing trend, guy. I really believe that the NHL may not start in the years to come till November.
Locker, when the players eventually do get back on the ice for games, are you envisioning some choppy and rough start to the play? Because these guys have been overseas, making their ways back, haven't had access to rinks until very recently. Do you see that, being a hallmark of the early play when they return?
I think in the early rounds, like with the Caps playing one exhibition game supposedly on the slate now for somewhere in the late part of July if things go right. One exhibition game and then get right into the round robin. That'll be 3 games, so 4 games, and then kick right into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah, there is going to be some rust. There are going to be some nicks and things like that, but it's going to come down to July 10th. If training camps do indeed open on time, that gives them a couple of weeks. These guys are in tremendous shape, but like all of us say, for any sport, you've got to be in that sport shape. And to me, it's getting the legs and the groins and all the muscles that are used in the skating stride back in order. That, to me, and the timing of the hands and the legs working in unison is going to be critical. Do they have enough time? Yes. But do I envision some choppy play to kick off the Stanley Cup playoffs? Yes. And that will lead to some upsets for teams that maybe aren't up to snuff. I do believe the Capitals are set. They've got a great plan in place. I talked to Todd recently. They've got a tremendous plan in place about these early small group things they're doing, then expanding to the training camp and how it has to be different than a September training camp and all those things. They are not going to be left behind the 8 ball. I will tell you that. They are very detailed and prepared for this upcoming Stanley Cup run.
So you don't believe it's going to start July 10th just based on the discussions between the players in the league? You think it'll go beyond that?
I would say this. No, I think it will start July 10th, but I think the pushback will have to be the start of the so-called season. You know, they want to start July 30th, guys. They want an exhibition game between the 25th of July and the 30th of July. And the schedulers would like to start, for example, the Capitals round robin August 1st or 2nd, along with the other teams starting their play-in series. So to me, that is going to be the extension part. To me, I don't think training camp will not start on time. I think it will, July 10th, but I'm not so sure the start time for the so-called season, the play-in, the Stanley Cup playoffs will kick off as stated on August 1st. I just think that timeline's pretty difficult to achieve.
Interesting.
Talking to Craig Laughlin, the Locker from NBC Sports Washington. Who are the biggest threats in the Eastern Conference for the Capitals to get through?
Go down the list that they're playing right off the bat. I mean, Boston, Tampa Bay right off the bat. And to me, sort of a dark horse during this pandemic, all these teams all of a sudden are healthy again. I mean, you have very few players on the shelf. To me, Columbus could be a tough out for any team. They're playing Toronto in the first round. I think they'll get past the Leafs, and now with all their players healthy, from the back end to the goalie in good situation, a lot of these teams now, guys, have more people than they know what to do with, because you can carry 30 players now from now on for this run of the Stanley Cup playoffs and the play-in and all that stuff. So now you've got a lot of decisions. The Caps will carry 30. They'll carry 3 goalies. They'll carry 10 defensemen or whatever they're going to carry. So there's a lot of competition. But I really feel Columbus could be a dark horse to come out of the East. You're going to have to play really well to beat that tough team.
It's going to be weird for you. I don't know where you're going to call the games. I assume you're going to be, I don't know if you're going to be in a studio. You're not going to be at the arenas, I don't think.
No, we'll be in the studio.
Yeah.
I'm 100% sure. I'll have 6-foot separation from Joe B.
Right.
And we will call the game. We will do I imagine the preseason and the play-in, and then we do the first round, unless, because of the new hub cities, there's going to be 3 games a day. You know, they'll have 2 cities. So say, for example, it's Toronto and Edmonton. In Toronto, we'll play on Monday, and 3 will play in the other. The next day it'll be after a day off, they're going to try to stagger it. So there'll be 5 games every 2 days. It depends, just 3 in one city. So you're talking times of 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, probably 3 to 3.5 hours between games. So people are going to get a boatload of hockey in a small period of time. But, yeah, Joe B. and I will be along. We expect for the first round for sure, like we always are, and then the national coverage takes over. I think the only people in the stadiums and in the arenas will be the guys from big NBC and Keith Jones and all those guys. I think we are going to be sequestered to the studio, and that's my feeling right now, and I don't think that would change.